So the case itself was repurposed from another project for the prototype of what I was going to do here. Obviously, when I built this case back in, I think it was a tail end of May, early June, the ATEM Mini Pro had only been released here in Australia for about 2 weeks. And I was one of the first to purchase one in the country. And I had no concept of what I was going to do. There was, I guess, no reference point around the world of how you could potentially package something into a portable system. So I had a lighting DMX controller case, the MAGMA case here, that I repurposed for this particular project. So I'll open up the case here via these latches and I'll show you what's on the inside. So, as you can see here, the case is pretty much ready to go from the time that you open up the lid. It's got a slide out tray which pushes back to reveal all the components. The monitor itself pops up and sits there basically ready to go as such. So I'll go through all the components. What we have here is a Soundcraft Notepad 12X USB mixer as such. And then what I might have to do is move the camera. And then we have the ATEM Mini Pro. We also have a Stream Deck. This is the 15 button Stream Deck. And some of the actual ports that we have on top. We've got a HDMI input. Now there is 4 inputs on the back of the case. This is a 5th one. And there's also another HDMI input on the actual laptop itself. And I'll show you a little later how I switch between the 3 ports to be able to get the 7 inputs into the ATEM Mini Pro. And this little cover here slides off. And that actually reveals a host of components underneath. So I'll run through those a little later. So effectively what we have here is a Lilliput 10.1 inch 4K input. It's actually a 1080 monitor, but it will accept a 4K signal. We also have a voltmeter and we have an assortment of battery chargers. So I'll move the camera around. Okay, as we move around to the rear of the case, there's obviously an assortment of connectors on the rear panel duplicating what's inside the case. To the left here we have a Merit socket for a 12 volt power. That's an alternative method to powering the unit via an external battery, a 12 volt source. What we also have here is a Neutrik power con. That powers the internal transformer, the 12 volt transformer. We have an Ethernet port which goes into a 5-way hub. We have a USB 3.0 socket as such, which connects into the internal laptop. We also have a XLR male output, which comes out of the mixer, the internal mixer. And then what we have here, this one here, is the HDMI output from the ATEM Mini Pro. It's an assortment of HDMI inputs going into the ATEM Mini Pro, and this socket here is also a Merit socket, so that's also an output should you want to power something externally as well. So this one's the input, this one is the actual output as such. So once we turn the case around, and on this side here we have an Ethernet port, which is an input or output, and there's the grill there for the internal 30mm fan, or one of the actual fans that are built inside the case as such. And on this side here we have a power con out for an external mains powered source. In my case I've actually got a power board that has a power con connector, and it's a 6-way power board with USBs, which I'll probably put into the video a little later as well. So what I've done right here is we've actually powered the unit up via the mains power. As you can see, all the components are now operational. So there we have the multi-view on the 10.1 inch Lilliput monitor, and we can change that to program view, and it will give you, in this particular case, we have the output from the laptop, which effectively goes via our little switcher down here. So we can select between the laptop, and we can select between this particular port here and the rear port. So there we have our Stream Deck. And then right here we have a voltage and amp meter. So currently right now it's charging the laptop battery and a whole bunch, so it has dropped down to 11.7 volts, but it generally runs at about 12.1, and we're pulling about 9.6 amps. And the actual transformer that's inside the case is rated up to 16.7 amps, so we're well under its capacity. And we also have the output power in watts. Very handy when you are running the unit from a 12 volt source, particularly a battery. At a glance we're able to see the status of that particular battery. And then we have our little charger here, our quick charge, and it also displays the voltage there. Clearly you can see the inconsistency between one and the other. And then we have obviously our battery chargers again, and our Soundcraft mixer. This is an absolutely amazing unit. The sound quality is fantastic. The great thing is, for a mixer of this size, it does run on an 18 volt power supply. It does require 18 volts, so I did have to make a converter, or a step up converter, to go from 12 volt to 18 volt, and that's mounted internally as well. It's a highly regulated, highly filtered power supply. And the great thing about this mixer, we have 4 microphone inputs. Each one of those has 48 volt phantom power. 2 of the inputs have got a high impedance for a guitar as such, or an instrument pickup. We've got a high pass filter. And then what we have down here is a 3-band EQ on all the mic channels. And we do have effects. On occasion I've had to use some effects, but it's very rare. And then obviously one of the XLR outputs goes via the converter. There is a balanced to unbalanced converter, and that basically converts it to a 3.5mm jack. The other one is directly on the back of the unit via an XLR Neutrik socket. Down the bottom here again, and there we go there, the monitor. What I've also done is I have installed a cold shoe mount down here for my Holyland wireless HDMI receivers. Obviously the transmitters are mounted on the cameras. You can see the HDMI outputs here, and what I've done on the side, I'll just move around to the other side of the case here and I'll just demonstrate. I've actually installed 2 sockets, 12 volt sockets, that are powered from the internal transformer. The Holyland units will work with any voltage, any DC voltage from 6 to 16 volts, I believe it is. So they're 12 volts. It's fairly safe, which effectively means I can be set up for an event in under 5 minutes. Literally, as I open the lid, I switch on a few components and I'm ready to stream. So we'll move around the back once again. I do want to take a moment here, if I could. I'm not too sure how this is going to work, but underneath here, I'm going to have to turn the camera a little here to get a shot of it. My apologies. But underneath here, there is a laptop power supply that converts from 12 volt to 19 volt. So that effectively is the unit in its entirety. Wherever I've taken this unit, I do get a lot of compliments on the professional look at the unit. It's streamed, well, I think close to 50 events, this particular unit, without any issues. And the great thing is the versatility of having it running either off mains power or off the grid 12 volt power. I do have a 100 amp hour lithium battery pack, and that will power it up to 9 hours on a full charge, which is more than enough for the types of events that we're doing, particularly ceremonies, wedding ceremonies, or funerals. I can do up to 4 events in a day off a single charge, and it's just basically one power cable going into the unit, whether it's an AC power cable. And the unit will run anywhere from 90 volts AC up to 265 volts, so it's a universal power supply. And it will power not only this unit, but does have the 12 volt socket on the back for an additional 3 to 5 amp hour device as such. But in my case, it has not been necessary. And the advantage with having the battery chargers on board, it just means that for my cameras, I'm easily able to just charge the batteries for my lights as well. And the audio mixer really does give a professional touch to the audio. I am considering selling this particular unit, so if I do decide to sell, I'll put details below. I'm going to try and put together all the components that I used in this particular case, particularly the model number of the case itself. That way, if there's any aspect of this case you'd like to reproduce, you'll have all the component lists. But as I said, it works remarkably well. It's been rock solid in terms of its reliability, given what is in the unit and how slim it is in the profile of the unit. You can see yourself there. I've managed to cram, I think, 37 different components. There's a lot of work that goes into these cases, particularly to make it professional. If I do decide to sell it, I won't be selling it with the laptop. I do like this laptop a lot. It is a touch screen. It also has illuminated keys, and it's very, very efficient with its power. So I will be holding on to that, so I will be selling the case. But I can easily adapt the power supply to any laptop, particularly even MacBook Pros, if you are using one as such. All you really need effectively is a USB-C power supply. So that's the unit there. Any questions, please reach out. Hopefully I can inspire somebody to do the same. So what I'll do right now is I'll put the camera down and I'll depower the unit and pack it up and show you how quickly it packs up. That folds down. Basically what we do is we shut down the laptop. So we unscrew these plugs there. That slides out as such. HDMI cables, unplug, move that off to the side, little panel goes in here, push that down, close the laptop, slide it forward, lid on top, fasten, and we're off to our next event.